This time we are talking with you about the article that you recently published with the Pan-African Review magazine. It is Reflections of African Liberation Movements. That is the title of the article that you wrote. And something came out quite strongly in the article. At the beginning of it, there is a distinction you are making between independence movement and liberation movement. And I had never thought before that those two could actually be either the same or different. I don't know. I never thought about it. So what is the distinction? Why are they different? And why did you think it's important to point it out?
Yeah, I think usually when people talk about liberation movements, they specifically use that term for movements that took up arms to fight either the colonial governments or independent African governments that took over from colonial rule. Now, independence movements tended to be peaceful. They never took up arms. They would use things like protests and boycotts and all kinds of mass action. So those are not referred to as liberation movements. The liberation movements are these ones that took up arms. And I think I'm not sure that the distinction, we can make a very clear distinction, but as far as I can figure out when I'm reading about these things, it seems like that's the kind of loose distinction that is made between them. One uses arms, one uses other methods, but ultimately they all lead to what the people who head them would say liberation of people either from colonial rule or from oppression by post-colonial governments.
Right. And there is also another distinction that came out strongly. It's about the groups. Say, for example, there is, let me just read it real quick for you so that you see what I am talking about. You said, liberators made such extravagant promises that in the end, they were generally eventually unable to deliver. There, you are talking specifically about those ones for the liberation movements and not the independence?
No, I'm actually talking of both. The independence movements led by people like the veteran African leaders, Kenneth Kaunda, Julius Nyerere, Milton Obote, Jomo Kenyatta, and the rest of them. When they were fighting for independence, they made very specific claims. And we usually sum these up as liberating people, freeing people from ignorance, disease, and poverty. And those things made very specific, or at least they were understood in very specific ways. That liberating people from ignorance meant investment in education, providing free education, and making sure that all a country's children who were of school-going age would be able to go to school, and that there would be access without discrimination, whether on gender lines or even on ethnic basis or regional basis. When they spoke of freeing people from disease, they meant to promise that they were going to build functioning health systems, which would make sure that people no longer die from preventable diseases, that people got high quality healthcare when they needed it. When they claimed to want to free people from poverty, they meant building robust economies, which would enable people to prosper collectively. And if you look at the history of Africa, you would see that hardly anyone delivered on any of these in any serious way or at all. Almost all our first generation of African leaders, they made loads of promises. They made people so hopeful that after colonial rule, life would be so good and so easy for everyone. But actually what happened is we then got really serious economic instability. We got coup d'etat. We got into all kinds of difficulties. Now it's in that sense that I say they really didn't deliver. They raised our hopes, but they fell significantly short of
Right.
delivering on those three.
Yeah, but you
If you
call
look
them
at-
you call them extravagant though, and they rather sound pretty basic promise you will make to your people if you want to liberate them. It's education, it's health, and infrastructure. Why do you refer to them as extravagant promises?
Well, extravagant in the sense that they made people think that these things were easy to do.
Okay.
But because the colonial governments had not delivered fully on these things, they made us believe, or they made those Africans who were alive at the time believe, that once our fellow Africans were in power, we would get access to all these things. And unfortunately, we didn't.
Right.
So it is in that sense that I say they were extravagant promises.